Hi, I'm Phil and I'm living in the Netherlands. And I am Dutch. I grew up here, born and grew up here. And not long ago we had elections and chose a far right wing party. It might already be known by you because it is becoming international. People wondering what is going to happen. Um, and how it reflects their own problems with far right. And yes, the one who's leading the party is a really far right person. He um, he doesn't like Islam. He says it is a backwards religion. He is, I suppose, scared of it, and he wants to lock the country so for immigrants with a Muslim background. Well, imagine you are in a war and you need uh, refuge, a place to go, and somebody just tells you, well, you can't, you have a Muslim background. But, but it is not set in stone that Geert Wilders is going to be our next prime minister. And I will come back to that later, but it has to do with the Dutch political system. And I noticed in some vlogs that it is not really understood what that means, so I want to go deeper into it. But first I want to tell you why I am starting this vlog. As you can see, there's probably nobody here. And that is that I just am very interested in this topic. I really want to explore this, and I would like to explore that with more people. When I was born, or when I was young, the Second World War was not that far back, and it was vividly present in movies, in people speaking of it. And for years and years, I have been wondering what is what has happened in the 30s that a whole country is starting to follow one man who then uses them to conquer big parts of Europe and ends up deep in Russia. It is almost some sort of belief, but it certainly has something to do with a strong man who can set things right. I think it is a trust issue. I think that a lot of people in those days and nowadays are starting to feel insecure. And I think that it started in around early 80s when we had a crisis, and after that the difference between rich and poor became larger, and with it the problems that come with it. And the problems in the 30s were, of course, because of the depression, far more bigger than it is here now. But financially, it is very fragile, and everybody knows it. Inflation is high. Gas and oil here in Europe, we're not going to buy it it cheap anymore because we're not buying Russian gas anymore. And yeah, I think that the best symptom, or the two best symptoms of um, where we are in the West, is Putin and Trump. And we do have war in Europe. It has been 80 years ago or something that we had war in Europe. What happened that this could happen? And what is happening with the Dutch people and all the other people in the States and living here? I realized that at some point, and that's a while back, that I didn't need to look at the 30s anymore and wondering why people do what they do, under which pressure, and why people seem to be normal at one point and not that normal later on. I realized I can look at this time. And now it has come really close, because we now have a far right wing party who is taking the initiative to form a coalition. And here we go with the Dutch system. What is going to happen in the next few weeks and months is that Geert Wilders will try to form a coalition. He needs a coalition to have a majority in the second chamber, because he has himself 37 seats, but there are 150 in the second chamber. So apparently he needs a few more. A scout has been appointed, but he withdrew already. Somebody else need to take that task, but and will be soon appointed. I'm sure there's already a name and a person, of course, behind that name, and he is going to talk with all the parties from high to low, I think, to see where there are agreements with the party of Wilders and where there are not, and if there is any wiggle room, any room to negotiate. The report, I think, needs to be finished at the 5th of December. Can be one day earlier or later, but somewhere around that time. And then somebody else is going to be appointed to facilitate the negotiations between different parties in order to form a majority coalition. And that can take up to a few months, and that might be more than 2 or 3. But that is normally 2-3 months, some a few weeks, but it depends. It looks like it is going to be a hard task for Geert Wilders to come up with a coalition, especially because one of the parties which would fit well in a coalition with Geert Wilders is the VVD. The VVD has been the biggest party in the last 12 years here in Holland and has been delivering the Prime Minister. He resigned recently. He thought that 12 years was more than okay, and I think that is. So they have a new leader in the party, and she came forward the next day telling everyone that um, she is not seeking a coalition with Geert Wilders. It seems that she hasn't repeated that statement later on. Maybe because a lot of people, a lot of supporters of the VVD were not really happy with that. But let's see what happens. There is now a suggestion of four parties to make a majority coalition in the second chamber. And a lot of people in those parties are newbies, really noobs. Um, they haven't seen the inside of uh, the second chamber yet. And that already points out that, yeah, it might be an unstable coalition. But before that, the coalition needs to be formed. It means that in a process of a few months, they are going to talk about the most important topics and make agreements on those topics. It is a pretty thorough process, which means that when a vote needs to be cast, that the whole coalition is voting in the same way. It is not like you have in the States where some Democrats can vote for a bill the Republicans put on the table and the other way around. That's not the Dutch system. But to get to a coalition like that is getting harder and harder already in the last decade or so, probably somewhat longer. And for Geert Wilders to make a coalition is even harder because he has been excluded by a lot of parties in the past. They didn't want him in any coalition. They once tried it in a different way and that didn't work out either. That is like that he is not part of a coalition, but when there is a minority coalition and not a majority coalition, so the coalition still doesn't have enough seats, it might be that you are looking for somebody who is going to support you on the most on the most important topics, and well, that needs to be negotiated as well. They asked Geert Wilders for that, and they were I don't know what happened in there in that room, but it never again was about the words that were uttered. It might mean that Geert Wilders will not be capable of forming a party or a coalition. Sorry, he already has a party. Not able to form a coalition. In that case, he can do two things. He can go for a minority coalition, which means that the agreements in the coalition are tight and they are going to work together, to stay together, to vote together. Um, and you need to negotiate on certain topics. Uh, every topic, again, with parties who are interested in what you want. And then come to a deal. That's one thing he can do. What he also can do is give his initiative away, which means that everything is open and that we even might end up with a left-wing coalition. I don't expect that because you hear people talking about respecting the voters, and then to come up with a left-wing coalition doesn't sound right. What surprised me, I think we have said enough about the Dutch system for now. Oh, by the way, if nothing is going to work, we will be sent back to the elections again. I was listening to a program today. There was a writer there, Lale Gül, and she has a Muslim background, but is, yeah, I don't know, but at least on the liberal side. And she was telling that most of, no, not most, I don't know that, but a lot of Muslims are voting right, on the right side. Left tries to find them, to make them feel okay in the Netherlands, but from well, not by nature, but by culture, they most of them vote on the right side. And so there are a lot of those who have been voting for Geert Wilders and his party. But also on the left wing or liberal, she says there are people who have been voting for the PVV. And that has to do with some sort of fear, what I understood. We have a small party, it is called Denk, translated it's think, and Denk, or Denk, Tank, think, tank, I don't know. And Denk is run by people with a Muslim background. And their supporters, the people who vote for them, are almost all Muslims themselves. And the liberals are sort of scared for that, because what we see in our society is that secularity, which is in our constitution, seems to be less and less prevalent. When we look at schools, there are more and more Muslim schools where they teach the Islam pretty thoroughly. Some of them don't get high grades on what they teach. Besides that, there are weekend schools, and those weekend schools are only focused on Islam. And what should education do? It should learn you to write. It should learn you to think, I think. It should learn you to do math and understand math, not to um, teach you a religion. We already have a lot of Christian schools, but secularity is nowadays common to Christian people. But it's not that common for people with a Muslim background. They want to incorporate um, their background in every level of society, which means that um, they create, um, they might create a society within a society, and that doesn't feel right. So it is about integration. When we had a lot of Syrian people fleeing from their country and also coming here, we didn't have the capacity to support them. So big tents were, the army was asked to place big tents, and a whole lot of volunteers worked with professionals to give them what they need in clothing, in food, in a roof above their heads, and so on and so on. And it turns out that friendship between Dutch people and Syrian people started to occur, which is normal, I think, if you are close together and you start to talk with each other, you probably will make friends. And the integration, it turns out that the integration of those people has succeeded better than the integration of, for instance, Moroccans. We see that the third generation is even for a part more conservative than the generation before them. And I think that also has to do with insecurity and also to do with trust and also to do with the position most of those people have in the society. And that means poor, being discriminated, no work, no options for work, and then people start to look for security in their own way. And I think then that I am with that back to the theme I want to explore. And I want to do two things. One is that I keep you informed about what is going on here in Holland with the coalition, and further on how it affects our society. And secondly, I want to investigate some topics which I will present them to you. And the first ones, the political ones, will probably be short, just to inform you, and the other ones will be probably somewhat longer. And I hope that I know a bit more about editing and that I can make this will look nice. As for now, you need to do it with this, but it will change. I'm going to do this for at least a few months to see how it goes and whether people are interested, whether I get some subscribers, and otherwise I think I will not stop it, but will put it on a lower, yeah, will do it uh, slower. Let me put it that way. I won't stop it because I am really interested in this topic. I think it tells us something about being human and how vulnerable we actually are. So that is my plan, and if you like that, then you are very welcome. And if you don't like it, you probably are not here already. There's one thing I want to say to end this, and it is about Lale Gül. I do think that she is right. I already was thinking that before she suggested it, but I do think that um, that Geert Wilders actually deserves a shot. There are things we don't talk about. There are things we don't want to face because we find them complicated and we don't want to talk about it. And one of those things is secularization. As a gay person, I do know that teachers at schools are having a harder time than than before. But I also know that we discriminate a lot of Muslim people. So from both sides, we need to talk about this. We need to work on integration, and not that they need to become Dutch, but we need to be able to live with each other in a way that we aren't scared of each other. And trying to lock the door. The EU is also, well, we can see at Brexit that it is not a good idea to to go back to not be in the EU. We are one of the founders. We started off with, I believe, 6 countries, and we are one of them. And we were one of them. And now my thought train has been interrupted. Let me think for a little bit, otherwise I will just close it down, because I think I have said enough. But the EU is another thing we do need to talk about. And that doesn't mean that we need to talk about whether we are going to stay or not, but what does the EU actually do, and how is it penetrating our lives? Because it does. It is, you could say, creating questions in our society about environment and stuff like that, and some would say problems, not questions, but problems. So there are really things we need to talk about, even if it scares us to talk about it. And so I hope that um, Geert Wilders within a coalition will make it possible. So he is not just the party that is going to rule, but within a coalition, with the check and balances that it gives, I think there are more check and balances with a system like this than a two-party system. With the check and balances that it gives, the thoroughness that they need to prepare themselves for a majority coalition in um, the second chamber, I hope that we can start talking again and that we can find a way back to each other. Okay, that was really it. And this was long enough, more than enough. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you back again. Okay, bye bye.